watching Press TV's News Review, where we look deeper into some of the top stories of the day. Stay tuned, everybody. On this news review, China has blasted U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for sending a congratulatory message to Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen on her inauguration. The Defense Ministry accused Pompeo of interfering in China's internal affairs and damaging peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. The ministry called Pompeo's message extremely wrong and dangerous. The top U.S. diplomat had hailed Tsai for her vision in leading Taiwan's vibrant democracy. In her inauguration speech, Tsai called for dialogue with China but rejected its proposal for a one country, two systems proposal. China views the self-governing island as its own territory, but the 63-year-old leader said the island's democracy does not want to be part of China and governed by Beijing. Well, joining us now on this edition of the News Review, we have Press TV's Stephen Rebay joining us from Beijing. Also, we have political commentator Jason Unruhe joining us from Niagara Falls, Ontario. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's start off with Stephen in Beijing. Stephen, let's talk about the recent speech made by Tsai Ing-wen. She said she wants dialogue with China but is opposed to the one country, two systems proposal. Talk to us more about that.
Well, this is nothing new, and nothing new is happening in the short term. She said that Taiwan does not want to be part of China. She called for dialogue. That's because Beijing cut off a formal dialogue mechanism when she was elected in 2016. You see, her Democratic Progressive Party, Minjindang, is traditionally less inclined to be part of China than its opposition, which is called the Kuomintang. And the Kuomintang is descended from the Chinese who fought with the Communist Party in the Civil War and fled there. So they still firmly believe Taiwan is part of China, but they're out of power now. But it's important to point out that Tsai stopped short of calling for formal independence. China has threatened invasion if she does that. America would not encourage her to call for formal independence. China responded to her talk the way it always does. It said that reunification was a historical inevitability. It said that it will reunify Taiwan with China using force if necessary. And Pompeo didn't say anything unusual either. He called Taiwan a vibrant democracy, a force for good. He called her president, but again, he stopped short of referring to Taiwan as an independent country. So there's no difference in the short term. Nothing new has happened in the short term. I think with Taiwan, what we've got to look at is the long-term trends. And the long-term trends is that China's rising, it's building up its military, and you would think that time is on its side. It's certainly using its military to behave in a more assertive way with Taiwan. It's been conducting military drills off Taiwan's coast. It's been sailing its battleships around Taiwan, flying fighter jets into Taiwan's airspace. But at the same time, in a way, time is not on China's side because less and less people in Taiwan now identify with China. More and more think that Taiwan should be an independent country. It's only the old people, I was talking about those Kuomintang, who are left over from the Civil War. They're the only ones who firmly believe that Taiwan is part of, there's only one China, although they disagree on exactly where who should rule China. That's the important thing. The other third long-term trend is the Trump administration. The US has become more assertive. It's upgraded relations with Taiwan since Trump came into power. It's built a new de facto embassy. It's approved 4 big arms sale packages. The last one was in summer last year, $8 billion, 66 F-16 fighter jets. And Trump even passed a Taipei Act aiming to increase the scope of relations between Taiwan and the US. So this does indeed irk China. But I think China, secretly, is quite gratified with Trump because China sees Trump as antagonizing everybody. He's making friends with everybody. He's not picking his friends or enemies. He's even antagonizing the EU, the way that China sees it. And they think that this aids them in the long run. You see, China is not going to confront America over Taiwan until it's much bigger than the USA. And China secretly believes, I think, that Trump is a fool. He's antagonizing everybody. So he's making it harder for the US to have the allies that it needs to confront China.
Thank you, Stephen. Jason Unruhe is getting a little restless over there. Jason, we're going to come over to you now. Stephen believes that relations are pretty much it's the same old business between China and Taiwan. Some believe that relations have reached a historical turning point. Where do you see the issue, and also where do you see the peace of the United States falling into this conundrum?
Well, I would tend to agree that this seems very much like everything that we have heard before. I mean, they're not particularly proposing anything new. There's no real substance coming out of this. This is always going to be a very long-term game between the United States and China. I mean, the fact is, Taiwan does believe that it is China, but the rightful China. The most successful example of a peaceful coexistence, or like a dual acceptance, in 1971, it was UN Resolution 2758 that tried to find some kind of middle ground to recognize the independence of both of them. But frankly, there really is only one China, and that is the People's Republic of China, which a divide was created by the Communist Revolution in 1949. And there's no real reason to believe that Taiwan is really distinct in any way other than any events that may have occurred since that time. But we basically have a struggle here between the United States and China. The U.S. seeks to undermine anything that is China in any way, shape, or form to put the bulwark up for their declining empire, while China is continuing to rise as a superpower across the world. Now, certainly there's many arguments to be made that perhaps Taiwan should be an independent state, but I think it's unquestionable that the people of Taiwan are Chinese, and this is where their roots are. So I think it's very usual for the U.S. and China to rattle sabers over this piece of territory, Taiwan. China sending airplanes in as a demonstration of power is not much different than the U.S. Navy coming into the same area to perform defense drills, which are basically the same thing, to show China that they are here and they are willing to hold on to what has been a very long-standing, almost frankly imperialist relationship between Taiwan and the United States. So what we have here is a very long issue of saber rattling over territory that is, frankly, China's, and that's really where this power struggle lies.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Jason Unruhe, political commentator, joining us from Niagara Falls, Ontario. Also, thanks to our correspondent Stephen Roubaix in Beijing. With that, it brings us to an end here on this edition of the News Review, but do stay tuned. There's plenty more to come here on Press TV.